Greetings from Timothy from the delphic.group. We do public privacy, we do public policy, privacy. We do many different advocacy here at the delphic.group. One of the things we wanted to be talking today about is education. One of these topics is kind of near and dear to me because, lots of many minds, there are wonderful minds have been held back by current systems and as somebody who has journeyed through public school system, I've seen successes, I've seen less than success, and so in these circumstances we can learn a lot from people who have gone through this system. We can learn from people who are currently going through this system. And you see certain people in schools today saying, questioning, well, should we go back to school, should we go back to these schools when there's what's going on. And what I would say is, ultimately, I agree with them questioning that because, especially certain schools, what are they for? And are they for success? Are they making for leaders of tomorrow? Are they for making people love learning? Are they for making innovation happen? Are they for inculcating critical thought and critical reasoning and a spirit of inquiry and a love of learning into their students? Or are they not? And if they're not, they need to be reformed at best, at shuttered at worst. If they're failure factories, we need to, and these teachers are waking up to this too. And we talk about students and teachers looking at the curriculum they have, looking at the resources they have, looking at their communities. Too many promising young minds are being derailed because they're being woken up too early. This messes up developing minds, and it makes learning not so useful. And they're being woken up far too early sometimes because they have to be bust these distances. And there's no reason sometimes to bust to these distances, especially with online learning, especially with new paradigms of learning. And a lot of people are against homeschooling because they feel like, oh, well, there's some people out there that are religious fundamentalists, and they're young Earth creationists, and they want to tell their kids that the Earth is this many thousands of years old, and God did it, and evolution is a lie brought to us. The fossils are devil record, and all this stuff. And I support their freedom to teach them that. If they really want to teach their kids that, who am I to say that that's not the case? Okay. So I support their freedom to teach that as much as it's like, okay, are they going to be able to be an archaeologist after that? It would be interesting if they did. So here's the thing, right? I support them being able to teach their kids how they feel that the world is, because why wouldn't we have freedom of choice for our citizens to be able to teach their children the way they feel? And otherwise, we have Brave New World, which is not what we want. There's no reason to put people into these tracks where you say, oh, these people need to be made by these indirect techniques to hate learning. And because we need them to accept their subservient role. So we're going to make this community hate learning by making this school, have severe deficits of one kind or another. And the teachers get disillusioned. And then it's like you have these other circumstances where I'll never forget my teacher, like Professor Burke, and he would do awesome things. He would engage the students. He was like a Mr. Bergstrom type. And I had another teacher, Mr. Rich. He was a history teacher. He would come dressed up like a cowboy. He would talk about the Roman Empire in terms that would inspire you. These are the kinds of teachers that we need to support and encourage and endorse. And when we do that and we celebrate them, then we're going to see more of those teachers. And the other thing about that is, with online learning, every classroom can be a pedestal for a teacher to stand on top of till the end of time and record their thoughts and their teachings in perpetuity. And so they're there in the record, and they're there in the public record. So if your son comes home from school and says, that Mr. Twilliger, he taught math so well, it inspired me. I've never heard somebody speak so persuasively, so engagingly regarding long division. And you can say, my God, what is he doing in that classroom? So I can log on to YouTube or another resource and look at what this teacher is teaching my kid and go, wow, I learned something from this class. I'll write him a letter maybe. So in this circumstance, you have an engagement from the teacher to the student to the parent, and you have all three groups engaged, and you have groups beyond that. And so you have this teaching, and so you have an incentive for teachers to inspire. You have an intense incentive for them to leave behind a legacy that is worth remembering. And why do people go back and watch videos of Feynman and some of these other people? They go back and watch those videos because those lectures were seminal lectures that had real wisdom. They had real insight. The way that, certain people, convey certain detail, structured interpretation of computer programs, Professor Oppenheimer, he gave those lectures better than anybody. And those topics are timeless topics. Those lectures are still worth checking out on YouTube. And so what I'm trying to advocate for is for every teacher that teaches to be teaching in front of a camera, for it's recorded for posterity. And so the teachers and a free association of teachers, because this video is going to be a little bit longer because I have a lot to say on education because it's a topic that's near and dear to me. It is the most fundamental topic that needs to be talked about the most because it shapes our future. And having a good education system that's going to work is going to, for every single country on this earth, and a system that moves beyond countries and that can reach everyone internationally is what I'm aiming for. And something that's free access to knowledge, something that's free access to teaching. And it's like so many colleges are already doing this. It's so inspirational. And it's moving beyond MOOCs. It's moving beyond, multiple online courses. It's moving beyond certification and credentialism. It's moving towards true wisdom, true insight, true knowledge. And how do you do that as a youngling who's learning and they're growing minds? You don't necessarily do that by putting them in a group of everybody that's the same age group. You don't necessarily do that by saying, you're going to be learning social studies this hour. You're going to be learning all about World War II this hour. And it's like, meanwhile, he wants to talk about rocket planes or something. And it's like, maybe he should go to the rocket planes classroom where there's 16-year-olds that are rocking it hard, where they go, look at this engineering thing I did. How amazing. And it inspires a young mind. Maybe that kid is more advanced. Maybe he's more rudimentary. Maybe he needs a little bit more time in one of the other classes to really understand something. And it's like to say, oh, you might have a passion towards mathematics, right? And not have a natural affinity towards mathematics, not have a natural ability in it. And you could say, well, okay, in that circumstance, should you devote time towards mastery of it? Should you devote time towards solid understanding of it? And it's like more and more in this world of competition, we're trying to have people lean towards their strengths. We're trying to have them specialized. And, you can say, oh, well, the system that Tim describes, it's going to make such uneven minds. It's going to make such ill-rounded people. And we want to strive towards a well-rounded populace that knows the basic standard of each thing. And that's all well and good. But sometimes, you can have somebody that's all about that. And you say, oh, they're all about being a generalist. They're all about, having a broadest understanding as possible and making novel connections between these understandings. And sometimes that happens early in life, and sometimes it's a later thing. You're specialized, and then you find to generalize outside of your specialty can lead to novel connections you never understood. And this happens young ages too. And so it's like, just like I support those people who are teaching their kids freely what they want to believe. And I support them teaching their kids, like, oh, if you want to teach your kids about American history via Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States, it's a very fine book. I recommend it. And it's like, these people didn't have a choice about whether they were going to see, Christopher Columbus glorified or whether they're going to see a critical analysis of what he did. And so it's like, in those circumstances, it's good to have a freedom of diversity to think what you want to think, to access all the information. And so it's like when you come back with conclusions based off of all the information, sometimes those conclusions are a little bit clearer. They're a little bit on target more than if you're just being fed some narrative, And it's like people are fed narratives in their college education too. And we could talk all about that. I'm talking more about K through 12 because I feel like, and it's like specifically like, there are sites like Khan Academy who have set a fine example of, here's a repository of the wide details. You have a problem with something, understanding something in long division or something like that. You can go and see this one specific video. You can say, oh, and it's such a broad spectrum of, and it's like, if you don't like this teacher, then you can see it from this teacher. And so this is where preserving these records really comes into handy and really comes into value, because then you could do an analysis and you can say, just like so many other things, some teachers need to find their feet. They need to be able to find the way that they can connect with their students. They might not find a following. And I think that would probably be the concern of teachers unions, to say, oh, well, Mr. Twilliger is like a hotshot math teacher that could be like a Feynman and really, enchant his students with the most finest things that you could ever imagine and really be a Sagan and inspire them. And, Mr. Heavens over here, he can't, he's still finding his ground. He he's not inspiring that same level of enthusiasm in his students. However, you can have that person kind of go under that more advanced teacher's wing and see what you can learn from them. And it's like not to ape them, but to say, well, where can I find my niche? Where can I find my group of students to inspire? So that's what I would advocate for with education, and that's what the Delphic group generally advocates for. One of the things that is talked about with education is it's all about schools and colleges. And I think that there needs to be more investment in museums and other things like structures like PBS, NPR, NEA. Because those structures, the National Endowment for the Arts can seem like, for some people, it seems like a waste of money. For others, it gives artists an avenue towards self-expression that they may not have had otherwise. And furthermore, it gives the public new art to appreciate year after year. And the same thing for PBS and NPR, where it's like, as much as the news could be a bummer, I'd rather go to those news sources than news sources that are beholden more. So, it gives people an outside perspective. It gives them something that's a diversity of perspective. And then there are groups in other countries that inspire me greatly, like British Broadcasting Organization. It does podcasts, it does radio shows, it does television broadcasts, it does all of this in a way that enriches the public discourse. And it enriches the memory of it too, because you can go back through the decades and they had great taste, they had great ideas, and they shared them in an eloquent way. And that's what I'm looking for from education going forward. And it's like, you may get to the point where, like there's books, there's lectures, there's on-hands learning, everyone learns differently. That's the thing about education. It's changing so quickly. For all we know, we're going to have some kind of expansion pack we slap on our foreheads to make us learn some advanced thing we could never understand on our own. And, when it's time to not understand it, you just pull it off of your forehead and you're not worrying about whether or not you understand that or not anymore. You can go about your day, So like that could be a thing that happens. And it's like, that would certain avenues to learning are like, are going away. And it's like to see as somebody who went through a technology college, it's strange to see certain tech courses like going away. And it's like, oh, well, it's because people did that. And then it's like the demand goes down for some reason. And you would think, oh, well, with society becoming more and more interconnected via networks that are internet networks and more connected by computers, you would think the demand would go up and up and up. But, it's because more and more work is being done by fewer and fewer people. The levers of change there, you can have a tiny little lever of change and pull it. And if you know where to stand, your force impact is going to be incredible. So what this means for people who are looking for tech work is that, you have to be beyond a 10x developer. But beyond that, it means that there's not as much competition because there's not as much demand. When you have such a producer that produces so much, you don't need that level of demand. So it's kind of interesting going through that program. There's so many amazing professors I can talk about. Art Posner taught so well. Chris Wosisi taught incredibly well, department chair over there. Grace Bonanno over at College of Westchester. I can't thank enough, other teachers too, and it's like for these teachers, it's one of these situations where they're giving back to their communities what they learned. And it's great to be able to take advantage of that and to learn from them and ask questions of them. And it's like, you can't ask questions to a lecture. And I asked many questions going through school, and I feel as if, they appreciated it. They didn't say, oh, this is such an imposition. This Tim keeps asking questions. And believe you me, I appreciate it. And so it's like, but one of the things with education is, so much of education is like being told what is important to learn. And I feel like more education, especially early on, should be about having taste and deciding for yourself what's important to learn. And then self-directed learning is the most effective learning. And when you have the freedom to choose what you're learning and in what sequence and why you're learning it and to what goals, to what requirements are you learning it, when you have that ability, it makes it much easier to learn in an effective way. And it amplifies your efforts and amplifies your ability to remember what you're learning. So I found that to be personally true of my own self. Most exceptional people have found that the bulk of their learning has been self-directed learning. It goes so far beyond credentialism. It goes so far beyond the essential structure of things that is provided to each citizen. But what we feel here at the Delphic Group is that the structure that's provided by public and private educational centers, whether they be K through 12, middle school, high school. There's not so many ways you can mess up kindergarten. As long as the teachers are sweet, and as long as the curriculum isn't too grueling, as long as the standards aren't too inhumanly rigid, you can't really mess up early education as long as it's provided. I think one of the key details, the critical details, is before you go to school, read to your kids. You have to have your kids read to, whether it's by you. No one's going to pay attention to you more than your kid when you're reading to them. They're going to remember that. It's going to develop their brain, their growing brains. Early childhood education that starts in the home is the most effective. You're not going to be able to find a teacher that your kid is going to pay attention to better than your own parents if they educate you well. So that's the goal, is to provide those resources to young parents, provide them the time they need so that they're not exhausted at the end of their day, so that they can read to their children well. So this is what we advocate for with the Delphic group, with the public policy proposals. And we hope you'll join us for many videos to come. We've got interviews coming. We've got book reviews coming. We've got so many different things. Music reviews coming, cultural criticism. We're going at this from all directions. We're going to have a grand old time. We're going to do streaming of Brawlhalla, which me and my wife love to play. We're going to have a fun time. We're going to have a diversity of content that'll never waste your time. I promise you that this content won't waste your time if you pay attention to it. And so no gabblegaw, no nonsense. We're just going to give you the goodies. And we're going to give it to you in a way that hopefully holds your interest. So if you like these ideas, if you like what we're trying to do here, tell your friends, share the word, spread the word. These ideas are the ideas that will work if they're given a chance. So I'm going to keep pushing these ideas forward, but these are the foundational videos that explain the policy decisions from delphic.group. And we hope that you'll give our efforts more attention going forward, and that they'll spread. These ideas deserve to spread because largely, they're the better ones to think about. We've been thinking about this for a long time to come with these ideas. So we wanted to share some of the more valuable ones. We're going to be putting white papers together to share, and we'll have those in the comments when they're done. But it's going to take some time because it's basically like little mini books. And it's like not so required to have like this big book with a bunch of bona fides that show one thing or another. You can look things up. We're giving you only the novel content that you can't get anywhere else. So we're going to keep giving that to you going forward. We hope you have a wonderful day, and hopefully these ideas found you well, and that you have a wonderful week ahead.